chapter 4. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. For you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans choose to do, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and detestable idolatry. They are surprised that you do not join them in their reckless, wild living, and they heap abuse on you. But they will have to give account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For this is the reason the gospel was preached, even to those who are now dead, so that they might be judged according to human standards in regard to the body, but live according to God in regard to the spirit. The end of all things is near. Therefore, be alert and of sober mind, so that you may pray. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. Amen. Right, there's loads in here, so we'll see how long I take. There's masses and masses. Probably could do about 3 sermons. Yeah. We'll see. So it's called Living for God. So I did some background reading as well as I was thinking about this. I've been I'm still here. Am I still here? Yes. How do we live for God? Now, in my background reading, I came up with quite a lot of different ideas, but they're not that different. So, obedience, faith, trust. These are the main ways we live for God. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Let's just see what you say. Is the Christian life an easy life?
No.
Thank you. Right. Now then, I was a new Christian in 1973, and I was busy witnessing to all my friends at university and telling them about how wonderful it was to know Jesus and how they had to ask Jesus into their life. And I had a friend called Ann Kumar, and I remember, I like the name, Ann Kumar. She said, I envy you. Everything is so simple for you Christians. Now I went away and I thought, I just haven't explained this properly. In a way it's simple. It's simple because yes, you trust in God, not in yourself. Is it easy? No. It's no because you have to trust in God. So that's hard for us because our natural reaction is, no, I can't do that. I don't want to trust God. I want to do it for myself. I want to be in control. We want to be in the driving seat of our lives, and we don't want to submit to God's control. So let's have a look at verse 2. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. The will of God. I've put that in block capitals for you. The will of God means submission and obedience to what he says, what he wants to do in our lives. Now, some of us love to worry. And I'm going to quote from something I found on Instagram. And if you want to know, I'll tell you who wrote it later. Anxiety isn't your friend. Anxiety will tell you he's your only friend. He will tell you he's the only one looking out for you, and he's the only one you should listen to. So for those of us who suffer from anxiety, we can recognise some of the thoughts there. But we know we're sort of wedded to anxiety, and we choose to be anxious. We choose anxiety. But it says in the Bible, God is always faithful. God is always good. And one of the commands in the Bible, as you probably know, is do not worry. Jesus said it quite a lot of times. God says it loads and loads and loads of times. And I just thought, I'll just check how many times in the Bible it says do not worry. I was thinking about 300 or something. And it's commonly stated, if you look this up on the internet, that it's 365 times that it says do not worry. Okay, so I'll let you do that for homework. You can go through the Bible and see if you can find out if it's 365 is right, if it's perhaps a bit less, perhaps a bit more. But it's certainly loads and loads of times God's command is do not worry. Now I personally find that one of the hardest commands of God to obey.
If somebody tells me do not worry, I think, oh, does that mean there's something to worry about?
Exactly. Yeah. Now I'm going to tell you a little story about the day I worried myself silly on the way to a church in Porto. We were in Porto for a holiday, which is in Portugal, and we had the bright idea, particularly Nick had the bright idea, of going to Hillsong Christian Fellowship on the outskirts of Porto. It was in a sort of suburb called Maia, which is 14 kilometres from the centre. Now we planned it, and Nick went on the website and read all this in Portuguese, and it was all well planned. So we knew we could get to a certain stage if we went by the metro. That's the easy part. So we got to Parco Maia by metro. So we had a 35-minute walk. Plenty of time, no problem. 15 minutes later, I was there with my Google Maps like this. 15 minutes later, it said, we've got 27 minutes to go. By which time we're beginning to think, ooh, not sure we're going to arrive on time. Are we going the right way? Go around the circle, maybe it's this way. You know, so we were doing Google Maps. But Nick prays for a taxi. No, he did that without me knowing. That was clever. And behold, there was a taxi in the middle of nowhere. Well, it was sort of on a road, but you don't really expect taxis sort of to be there when you want them at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. But I'm still cross because I'm hungry. Anna, you know that feeling? Know that feeling. And we were going to stop at a cafe, but there was no time now to stop at the cafe. Besides, we're in the taxi. The taxi drops us at the church, and pretty much in the middle of nowhere. But a nice person at the front door welcomes us to the church. You're a bit early, he goes. Would you like to go in the church cafe? Yeah. So there we were, tucking into our delicious croissant with ham and cheese and whatever it was, and nice coffee. But I'm still a little bit anxious, because I'm anxious about how we're going to get back into the centre of Porto. We stop at a cafe next to the church. We stop a little for just a quick coffee after the church, and then we walk down to the bus stop. Now I'm worried because Nick said, now I know the bus runs, it runs every hour, we'll get the bus, not a problem. Might be a bit of a longish walk on the way back, because it's sort of not quite where we live, it's just a bit of a walk. And with me and my legs, well you know my legs, so I wasn't very keen on doing a long walk the other end. We stood at the bus stop for like 3 minutes or something, and the chap we met at the front door at the beginning pulls up in his car with 2 people in the car that he's going to give a lift to the nearest metro, and he has room for 2 more people. So, God provided the taxi, he provided some food, he provided a lift to the metro. Once we're on the metro, easy. So he provided for me, even though I was the anxious little sparrow, not knowing what was going on and worrying. God provided for me and for Nick, but he obviously can walk a lot further than I can. And what was the service about? Now, most of it was in Portuguese. We sang all these lovely songs in Portuguese. Well, some crazy ones, really. But we sang them anyway, because words were up there. There was one going, ooh la la, yeah. Weird.
Still don't know what that
yeah, it was interesting. So it was all in Portuguese. Everything was in Portuguese. which we did, you know, ooh la la, you know. But the sermon was translated into English, and we had like headphones, and so we got somebody translating pretty much most of it. The sermon was about a very strange miracle, and his point was God's miracles are often odd.
Yes, God is odd.
Different. The money for the tax will be in the fish's mouth. Right, that's in Matthew. I haven't got the reference written down. You can check that out. The message of the sermon was, be obedient to what God is saying. So go and get the fish. The money for the tax will be in the fish's mouth. And what was God saying through the sermon? He is God. We, not so much. But we can trust him. So I'm going to look at number 6. Yeah. No. Is that it? Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think we're on number 6, yes. But you have spent time in the past doing what pagans choose to do. Is that verse 6? It's verse 3. Right, okay. But you have spent time in the past doing what pagans choose to do, and there are a great old list of sins. Now, these are the sort of list of sins that you get very excited about when you're 13 and you're a bit bored in church. And they read out one of these really juicy bits in the Bible about all these sins, and you know, you sort of wake up and think, oh, the Bible's got interesting things in it as well. But if we look at this list of sins, these are sins of excess. They're sins of bodily desires and of selfishness. And it's about putting yourself first. All of these, yeah?
Yeah.
And our culture is not so very different from the culture that Peter's talking about. And here are some of the things I hear at work. When I was at work, colleagues say, oh, what you need is a good party. So let's go out and get drunk. You need to let your hair down. Oh, dump your boyfriend, husband, partner, girlfriend, wife, dump them. Go and find yourself somebody new. You deserve it. And these are the attitudes we meet among our society. So this is not so different from our experience, even though it's about 2,000 years ago. It's not so different from what we experience in our culture today. There is an attraction of instant gratification. It is tempting. But what we have to remember, and Peter reminds us of, is there will be judgment. But they will have to give account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead, so that they may be judged according to human standards in regard to the body, but live according to God in regard to the spirit. And we can look back at a little bit, 2 chapters earlier. If we look at 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11 and 12, it says something a bit similar. Abstain from sinful desires, which can wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans, that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. So that's a good one to try and learn, good one to think about. They may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. Because, this is block capitals, our good deeds glorify God. Wow, amazing. And it says in verse 7, the end of all things is near. And we have to remember we are living in the end times. In Peter's time, they were daily awaiting the return of Christ. We need to be daily awaiting the return of Christ. We need to live our lives in a state of expectation. Because we are living in the fourth part of God's great plan. And I've done this before, but I've brought my visuals, so I'll do it. God created, God came down to heaven, created. Then there was sin, it's a cross, which blotted God's plan. Then there was the cross, the crucifixion, by which Jesus died for sin. And then that's an arrow. Arrow, go out into the world and tell everybody what Christ has done, that he has saved the world by his sacrifice on the cross. And the final stage is God makes a new heaven and a new earth. But we are living in this arrow. We're in the fourth stage of God's great plan. We are going out to tell people about the great work that Jesus did on the cross. We have to be aware that we are living in the last times before Jesus comes back. And so, this all follows on. Therefore, when that appears in the Bible, it means, because of this, then this, yeah? Because the end of all things is near, therefore, be alert and of sober mind. Now, Peter loves saying this. He loves repetition, does Peter? He says this 4 times. Be alert. Alert meaning being watchful, being awake. And I was thinking it's a bit like David when he was a shepherd before he was king, when he was looking out for his sheep and he was looking out for wolves and bears. He had to be alert. There was not going off to sleep, being half awake. And like we can be like drifting along, we can be half-hearted about our faith. But no, we need to be alert. We need to be of sober mind. Sober mind implies good judgment. It's the opposite of drunk. Drunk would imply poor judgment, possibly doing something dangerous, vision impaired, possibly, and a heightened sense of how funny, clever, original, wonderful you are. So we don't want to be like that. We don't want to be drunk in our mind. We want to be of sober mind. We want to be somebody who has good judgment and can see clearly and know what God is doing. And then if we look straight after that, therefore be alert and of sober mind, so that you may pray. It's all connected. So that you may pray. Pray. It's the first thing that he comes in. There's a few lists of different things the way we live for God. But the first one is pray. So prayer is communicating with God and getting in tune with his thoughts and his way of thinking. Prayer is very, very powerful. And the enemy wants us to stop praying. So we can think to ourselves here, this is challenging for me as well as for you. It's challenging. What percentage of our day do we spend in prayer? Do we think it's important? Do we make it our top priority in our Christian life, in our life at all? The top priority is prayer, because prayer is the most important thing. And then there's another really challenging one straight after that. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Above all, that means first, most important thing you do. Love each other deeply. So that's the opposite of shallowly, yeah? So deeply. Jesus commands, love one another. We know it's there in the Bible. So this is very simple to understand. Simple? Yes. Easy? No. Because many things can trip us up spiritually. But bad relationships within the church family is practically the most dangerous of them all. And love covers over a multitude of sins. And it's sins that put relationships under pressure. I want my way. You want yours. I behave badly. You do as well. And then there can be a falling out. There can be a thinking, that person, you can't get on with that person in church. That person is irritating. Yeah? That person is so critical of everything, I just can't be bothered with them. Perhaps they only think of themselves. And when you point Point at Nick, the safest one.
Or not.
When do you think that person is not being very kind? Look, there's one finger pointing at that person, but there's 3 fingers pointing back at me. Think about that. Think about yourself, not what you can see in somebody else, but what you can see in yourself. When you see your Christian brother or sister, what do you see? Do you see how they have hurt you? Do you see how they have wronged you? How they've let you down? How they break their promises? Is that what you see? Or do you see the person that Jesus has died for? Jesus is very, very clear. Love each other. And Peter repeats it, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. So we must learn to love. We must be quick to be gracious to other people. We must be quick to forgive. Because the way we love each other should remind people of the way Christ loves us. Part of love is forgiveness. What did Jesus say? Forgive each other as I have forgiven you. This is not always easy. It's hard to forgive people because we feel hurt and we want to hang on to our hurt. But to forgive means to let it go. And we have to focus not on what I want, but on what God wants. Right, I'm going to come back to it being difficult, okay? Let's come back to that. But how else can we live for God? Now, there's quite a few other things here, aren't there? Hospitality, service, speaking. And it's talking about God's gifts. How God's gifts to us as a church support and help the church family. How can we serve others? And the way we can serve others is as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. And also, if you follow down a little bit, if anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides. Okay? So how can we do these things? With the strength that God provides. It is not in our own strength. Serving each other and serving the community is one of our pillars in our church. It's one of the things we recognise as important, as one of the fundamental structures of Christianity and of our church. We have opportunities in this church to serve. As far as I know, we still have opportunities to serve on the Welcome Committee, serving coffee, helping with Messy Church, helping in the cafe with after hours, and you probably will come up with a few more if you start thinking and listening to people. We have opportunities. Sound team. We have opportunities in the sound team. And it wouldn't be a bad idea if we had more people on the projector, because we have very few people doing projector. There are opportunities, and don't worry about not being fitted, not being, because God gives you the strength to do these things. God gives you the strength, and the church family will give you the support you need to do things to serve the church. Now, here's a tricky one. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. Now, immediately we think of the preacher, don't we? Think of the preacher, or we think of the leader for the second service. But it doesn't say that. It says if anyone speaks, yeah? Not just the man at the front. If anyone speaks. So when you speak in church, weigh up what you're going to say. Is it true? Is it uplifting? Is it helpful? Is it positive? Now, obviously, the person who does a lot of speaking, like the preacher, has really got to take this on board. The person who preaches has a huge responsibility. They have to give the message that God wants us to hear. And we do try and take that responsibility seriously. It's helpful if you give us feedback, if you think we're sort of on the mark, like getting the message through, or if you think we go off a bit at some sort of tangent, you know. Give us feedback, but try and make it kind. Try and make it helpful and constructive, because none of us likes criticism, and it's the easiest thing in the world to give criticism, and it's the hardest thing in the world to receive criticism. But if you can give us constructive criticism, that's really good. So look how practical Peter is. It's all about what we do. We serve, we pray, we speak, we love each other. They're all practical things. And this is something for us to really weigh up. Christianity is not just about having the right doctrine. It's not just about a set of beliefs. It's about what we do.
Yes.
Because what we do is a powerful message of what we think, what we believe, what our priorities are. So that's something that Peter is really strong on. I mean, we looked all those chapters we looked at in the Gospels about Peter being a man of action. Here he is giving us a very straight message. And like Clive said, I think last week, it's not the bits in the Bible that we don't understand that causes us problems. It's the bits that we do understand. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. Is the Christian life an easy life? No. Right, I'm going to quote you a couple of quotes. I've got Dr. Howard Hendricks, which you've probably never heard of, who is an evangelical minister in America, recently died. So he says, living the Christian life is not hard, it's impossible. That's a good one to get hold of. And here's G.K. Chesterton, I've just discovered, and I think he's great. And he's a writer, poet, thinker, philosopher. He writes lots of really pithy little comments. And the one he says about Christianity is, Christianity has not been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and not tried. So that's a good one to think about. But we've got to remember, living for God is a supernatural calling. We cannot do it in our own strength. We do all these things in the strength that he provides. And then if we look right at the end of this passage, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
And so, our lives give glory to God. Wow.